Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the 10.7 support tier list. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Helps out a ton on the channel. Come check out the stream. We stream every night on YouTube, starting around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually go till about 2:30 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, come by, check it out. We'd love to have you. Super friendly, very chill community. No screaming and memeing. I try to explain everything that's going on in the game as much as I can. Answer any questions in the chat. Share some old man stories. Just come on by. It's a good time. And then we also do other content just like this, trying to help you understand the game a little bit better, enjoy it, appreciate some of the balance aspects of it a little bit more with tier lists. And we have patch notes, have in-depth champion guides, coaching sessions, and all sorts of other content on the channel. So be sure to come by, check it out. Okay. And with this, I'll have this Google Doc on the left here linked in the description if you want to have a little cheat sheet there. And in each Google Doc, I have a little mini Google Doc where you can click on it, and I'll tell you recommended runes, recommended items, and then a rating system 1 to 5. 1 being the champion is one of the weakest at the role at that task, and 5 being the champion is one of the best at that task. So lane pressure is how likely is it that the champion can get priority in the lane. Kill threat is how likely is it that someone... or that the champion can force a kill in the lane. Safety, how safe is the champion, particularly from ganks. Scaling, how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is how well does the champion perform over many games with average practice on the champion. So part of that can be how difficult are they to play in terms of mechanics and decisions. And then part of that is also how well do they fit into the meta overall. Are there other champions that work really well with them that might be on your team? Are there hard counters that are popular that might be on the enemy team? Okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off with Nami since we've got it on here. I think that she is going to be number 1 overall for many people on this patch. Now, I still personally prefer Rakan over her, but this isn't my own personal tier list. I mean, it is, I'm designing it, but it's not the stuff that I play the best. It's the stuff that I think is going to be good for everybody else out there. And I think that Nami definitely falls into that camp. Now, I do have a history of playing Nami fairly well. She's probably one of my top 5 most played champs, and usually I have a decent win rate on her. Although this season it's not been great, but several things are bringing Nami up in power a little bit. So she did get a change a few patches ago where Tidecaller's Blessing can apply to spells now, which works really well with a lot of things you may not necessarily think about. Also, right? So like Cassiopeia's E applies it really well. I think something like, I don't remember if Misfortunes Make It Rain applies all of it at once, but there's just a lot of only deal the bonus to non-champions. Okay, so area of effect damage only deals the damage to non-champions. Okay. But either way, it's just a little bit of extra utility on her, and they've nerfed some of the other enchanters, like they've nerfed Sona and they've nerfed Soraka a lot, and those were 2 of the champions that did do really well into her. And then they've also nerfed Leona and Nautilus, who were about 50-50 matchups with her before, but now that they've been nerfed a lot, she's really good. So the fact that almost everyone around her has been nerfed just is going to make her naturally a bit stronger. And just the way that the meta is shaken out a little bit, too, is good. I think Lucian is one of the most underrepresented ADCs, who's really strong right now, and she is one of the best with Lucian because his double shot will trigger that E twice. And the extra movement is really good with him. His ultimate shots can also trigger some E hits. So she just has a lot of synergies with Lucian, who's really strong right now. And then Vayne is another one who's very popular. If she gets through the laning phase, Vayne can be really strong. And Nami helps you get through that laning phase because it's almost impossible to lose lane as Nami, honestly, if the jungler doesn't come down. Because you just come up and you just spam your W on the enemy over and over and over again whenever it's on cooldown. It does damage and it heals you, all in one move, so it's extremely cost efficient, and it synergizes very well with Airy and with Scorch. So, and you get to land a free auto whenever you do that too. So you just walk up, EM, auto, back up. You know, it's going to deal 150 damage to them, and then you just rinse and repeat until they have to leave the lane, eventually. And if you do get them kind of low, not only do you have really good harass, but you have really good kill threat with your Aqua Prison if you land that on someone that doesn't have a lot of mobility. So someone like a Senna, someone like a Caitlyn, if you can land that Aqua Prison while they're trying to farm, then it's almost going to be a guaranteed kill if they're at 50% health and you're AD carry reacts at all. So she not only has good harass, she has good kill threat. It's good multiple AoE, CC, and team fights too with the Aqua Prison and with Tidal Wave. You have really good movement manipulation with your passive, and then being able to apply things like Tidecaller's Blessing and Ebb and Flow just to help your team run around a bit faster. And movement speed, being able to buff movement speed on your allies is huge right now because there are champions like Darius, like Set, like Garen, all of these like meatball kind of champs that are really supposed to be gated and balanced by their lack of mobility, can all of a sudden get in there and stick to people a lot easier. So she's fantastic with that, not only because she speeds people up, but she has that slow with the Tidecaller's Blessing, with the Tidal Wave. So she just brings a whole lot of CC to just like best in class trading in the laning phase, kill threat in the laning phase, lots of CC for an enchanter, really good ranges. That's something that a lot of people underestimate, is that this Ebb and Flow is 725 range. And, you know, Tidal Wave obviously has like 2800 range. Tidecaller's Blessing has 800 range. You know, the Bubble has 875. So that means she can play really far back, and it's a lot less likely that she's going to get picked off in team fights. And that means that she doesn't have to overcommit too much to stuff. And when you compare these ranges to some of the other kind of harassed range champions in the laning phase that are common, like Lulu is sort of getting a little bit more popular. Her E range is 650, so you're going to outrange that. I believe that Janna's is a little weird, but it's about 600 to 650 on her W. So you're going to outrange a lot of that stuff with this. And then Sona, really, to get the true value out of her Q plus auto attack, has to be in her auto attack range of 550. So that just makes her one of the best at trading in the laning phase. She also itemizes really well. Athene's Unholy Grail is very good on her because whenever you're in a fight and your W damages somebody and then bounce around and heal somebody else, the damage that's accumulated first is going to apply the Athenes to the heal that comes next. So you're just automatically with one spell simultaneously charging the Athenes and distributing the heal. So it's just very, very cost efficient. If you take Aerie and you put Tidecaller's Blessing on someone, that also puts Aerie on them. So if you end up taking Ardent Sensor, then you can comfortably put the Ardent Sensor buff on your AD carry by putting Tidecaller's Blessing on them, and then you can save your W and put your W on people that are on the front line fighting, your Darius, your Set, your Zac, or whatever. That'll give them Tidecaller's Blessing. It bounces around, distributes that heal off of Athenes. So she's just like a well-oiled machine for the items and the types of champions that are being played really well right now. By contrast, if you want to put like with Janna, for example, if you want to put Aerie on, or you want to put Ardent Sensor buff on your AD carry, on your Vayne or whatever, you have to use your shield, which is nice. I mean, and it does apply extra attack damage, but then you don't have a lot of defense to put on your allies. Right? Now, Lulu can kind of have a similar thing to Nami, where she can put her W, if she takes Aerie, she can put a W on her AD carry, it'll apply the Aerie shield and the Ardent Sensor, and then you can use your shield on the front line. But it's really kind of Nami and Lulu that are able to do that, where you can use your shields on the front line and also put the Ardent Sensor buff on your back line if you need to do that. So that's just some really nice synergy with the different items that are out there. And then Shirelia's also is going to be very good on her. You know, give that extra movement speed. She scales okay with plus healing and shielding, but you're not missing out too much on not getting something like a Redemption if you want to get that Shirelia's. And kind of doubles down on that movement speed, right? You can speed people up with Shirelia's and then put the E on somebody to get that slow going. And then once you start applying that slow, you can hit them with the Tidal Wave. And it's on a low cooldown as well. She's particularly good against Rakan, who's not like ultra popular right now. He's always a little popular, but I know personally Nami's one of my worst matchups. That Tidal Wave is just so annoying to try to get through. Like, it just stops so many mobility things from happening. Right, you throw that Tidal Wave in there, all of a sudden Rakan can't jump around as easily. Nautilus and Leona can't like hook and go in as easily. Jarvan can't flag and drag onto your team as easily. So it just stuffs a lot of engages whenever you have that Tidal Wave. And because it's such long range, it's really good follow-up if you have someone like a Zac who's going to jump, you know, really far ahead of the rest of your team a lot of times. Having that follow wave to come rolling up is pretty nice. So she's got a lot of utility to her, pretty good scaling, best in class trading, good kill threat, just an all around very strong champion in almost any situation right now. I will say that if you are against some champions that have a lot of blinks, like a Katarina, or some of these other like highly mobile champs, it can be hard to hit that bubble on some of the super mobile champs. So an assassin that gets really fed, that can jump around a lot, like a Zed, like a Katarina, a lot of them can do that. Then it can be a little difficult to manage them, and you can still get blown up. Her vision control is not amazing. You can check bushes with your Aqua Prison, but it's a pretty long cooldown, and it's a pretty clutch cooldown that you need if a fight breaks out too. So you don't want to be caught with your Aqua Prison on cooldown. So that is kind of, one rough thing is if they have an assassin particularly that's really fed, that has a lot of mobility, and you get caught out, it can be very difficult to get away from that, and you might die. So her vision control is not quite as good as something like a Rakan or a Maokai. But nevertheless, she's going to be good in a lot of situations, and she is a little bit... she does have a little bit more defense than something like a Sona or a Soraka if she gets caught out, because she can speed herself up. She can throw that wave. She can, throw some bubbles and maybe buy some time. So she's not as defenseless as some of the other enchanters, but she's certainly going to be a bit more vulnerable than someone like a Rakan or a Maokai. Okay, but yeah, Nami going to be really strong right now. And she has the highest win rate. I mean, I'm not always, all about that win rate. I do think that win rate matters. It's not everything, but it's something, as I always say. And the fact that she has a 12% pick rate and a 54% win rate, something that's that popular and has that high of a win rate, is something you should definitely pay attention to. Okay, Rakan, I talk about it all the time. For people that are newer to the channel, I'll try to give an abridged version here of why Rakan is really good. And there are several things he has going on. I think Nami is versatile, but I think that Rakan is the most versatile champion out there. And what it really comes down to is he's an enchanter that can engage. And that's extremely rare out there. I think he's, he definitely does it better than anyone else. But a lot of these other champs can't really start fights on their own. So like Lulu, Nami, they're really good at following up if someone else can engage. But if you don't have an engage on your team that's really reliable, right? If you have something like a Kha'Zix in your jungle and a Fiora top lane and like a Zed mid lane, your AD carries like Vayne or something, you're just kind of at the whim of the enemy. You're just hoping that either you can just constantly, YOLO queue them and just run around and skirmish and just pick them off. But at higher levels of play, especially, that starts to get a lot more dicey. So having someone that's a really quality engage that also scales very similar to many of the enchanters makes Rakan really unique in that position. So several things about Rakan going on. So he has that for him. He can engage with his ult, with his W, and not only does he scale with his shield like an enchanter, but he can also get out when he engages, which is another really rare quality. So if you go in as a Leona or a Nautilus and the fight starts turning south, like maybe a jungler jumps out of a bush, or your AD carry's just not feeling it, they don't go in with you or whatever, you can E and get back out. So he's one of the only engaged champs in the game that can simultaneously go in and go out at the same time. Champs like Nautilus can get away with their hook by hooking walls and towers. They can get out, sort of, but if they use that hook to go in, they're not getting out. Okay? So he has that that sort of agility that a lot of other champs don't have. The shield that I just mentioned is one of the highest scaling shields in the game. It's got a 280 base, because remember, you can apply this twice. So it's a 280 base with a 1.6 AP ratio. So extremely good AP scaling, extremely high base shield. Gets down to a 12-second cooldown, which matches Janna. So overall, it's going to be very strong. The other thing about him is his itemization is really good. So because he can engage and get in there, then he can use things like Zeke's fairly well, because when he uses his ult, goes in, knocks him up with a W, if they just get touched by that ice, then they're going to be slowed for 3 seconds. Even if he just barely taps him, right? Then they're going to be slowed by quite a bit for 3 seconds. So if you look at Zeke's here, and he can comfortably apply that slow to a lot of people whenever he touches people with his ult or even gets close to them, they're going to get that slow. Slows enemies by 20%, right? And if you're AD carry or whoever auto attacks somebody, then it goes up to 40% for 3 seconds. So that's it's not decaying. It's a full 3 second slow. So it's a very, very strong slow. It does give some extra damage. Now it says 30% magic damage. It's basically 15%. It's half of that on hit. So it basically gives your AD carry 15% extra damage for 10 seconds whenever you engage. It slows them by 40% for up to 3 seconds, and you occasionally might be able to do a little bit of extra damage, 40 extra damage per second. Usually you're not standing in there unless it's like a full out all in. But even if you just tag them, like with 1 or 2 of these, 40 or 80 damage, it's going to be pretty good. And it's very cost efficient by itself. You know, it's 104, not including any of these passives. So it's just all around a really solid item. On Rakan is very handy. He doesn't have to buy Gargoyle Stoneplate. I get asked about that sometimes. You've been seeing that on Leona, Nautilus, just all of these tanks, especially in pro play. You see them buying Gargoyle, and Gargoyle is a super good defensive item, but because you're so agile, you should be able to get out of fights without getting hit and blown up too much if you're, using that agility to the max. Right, so then that opens it up. If he wants to go for some enchanter items in some situations, you can. So you can get a Shirelia's. That's very common. I love that on him. It's only 2,000 gold. It allows him, it helps with his own personal engage, but it allows the rest of your team to follow up as well whenever you engage. So I think Shirelia's is awesome on him. And then some more situational items. If your AD carry's really going off, you can get Ardent Sensor. So then you get the extra on hit with Zeke's, the 30% extra bonus on hit. You get the extra attack speed from Ardent Sensor on somebody, and you get the on hit with Ardent Sensor. So especially if it's a champion that takes Rage Blade, like a Vayne, or something like that, then that's going to be a ton of extra damage. Or if you have like a Fed Master Yi or something on your team, that's going to add a ton of extra damage. So you can go Ardent if you want to as a potential optional item. You can go Redemption if you want to team fight a little bit better. If they do have a lot of damage, especially a lot of physical damage, you can go Knight's Vow to protect you and somebody else. You can go Locket if they have a lot of AoE burst damage, especially something like a Karthus, maybe a really fed Rumble, something like that. Then Locket can be pretty good. So he can get almost any support item out there. He has the option of being able to get it in different situations. And so because he's so adaptable, I just think that makes him great, depending on whatever team comp they decide to pick or whoever starts going off, maybe with their team comp, they could have a Diana that's going to get really fed. They could have a Zed that's going to get fed. They could have, a Vayne that's going to get fed. So you have potential answers to almost anything that they could run if you're going to take Rakan. So I just think that positions him super well in the meta just because he is so adaptable. He can engage, he can peel, he can be an enchanter, he can be sort of semi-tanky, and he can just use all of the different utility items that you might need. So I think that makes it really good. Now, he does have some pretty poor matchups that are becoming a bit more popular. So Nami, I think, is kind of a rough one. The big problem there, once again, is that ult in team fights. It can really mess you up. It can interrupt your jumps. It can just stop you from getting to where you want to get to. And she provides a ton of harass, so you're almost certainly going to lose the lane pretty hard if they have a Nami plus anything aggressive on their team. He can also have problems against things like Lucian and Vayne because it's almost impossible to hit them with your W in the laning phase, so it's really hard to trade unless they just goof up and use their dash. Then it's really hard to trade on those champs, and both of them are becoming more popular right now. Ezreal's also kind of hard to trade, but he doesn't do a lot in the laning phase anyways. So a lot of people are picking these more mobile champs right now, so that's kind of rough. And then things like Maokai is an absolute nightmare. We'll talk about him in a second. But that's that point-click W, being able to lock you up, and then using that ultimate as well is like a super Nami wave. Basically, it just stuffs so much of your movement. It's a very, very frustrating ability to go against. So he does have some tougher matchups, which is part of why I dropped him down a little bit here. He does have some tougher matchups that are becoming, more popular in the meta right now. But I think that overall, he's still going to be a really strong champ if you get some experience on him. He is a little bit challenging just because there are so many different things you can do. Then it can be hard for a lot of people that aren't experienced to fully optimize him, right? To be able to figure out when you should go which items, how you should be sequencing your spells. Should you shield and then W? Should you W then shield? How many people should you try to ult in the team fight? He's a lot more challenging than it might at first appear if you haven't played him before. Okay, but anyways, let's go into Maokai here. So Maokai is one of the newer ones. There's still not a lot of people talking about Maokai. He's had a good win rate in solo queue for a while, although it has been a pretty low representation. He is getting played a little bit more And not a lot of tier lists are talking about him right now. So I am one of the earliest. I guess I'm mainstream. I don't know. I'm not like super mainstream, like, you know, 1 million subscribers or whatever. But I think I'm one of the only sort of support people that is really giving him some serious consideration that makes tier lists. And there are several things. I tried him out. I think that, well, let me just show him real quick. Some of the big things that are helping him out, it's kind of like Nami-esque, where he's been like pretty serviceable, like I said, for a while, but the fact that his competition has been nerfed out is gonna make him a lot stronger. Holy, sorry guys, I have no clue where that came from. Like, this is muted. I don't know what, like, I try to show the ads just because, you know, I want to support this website, which gives us such great statistics, but sometimes some of these ads are just like insane. Anyways, sorry about that. So let's talk about Maokai. So Leona and Nautilus have been nerfed. They lost a lot of damage. And so I think that's opened up for some of these more champions that had been niche tanks to start coming back into the meta. And the types of champions that are coming back in are also making Maokai a little bit stronger. So especially those high mobility champions, he's very good against that. So against your Vaynes, against your Lucians, your Ezreals, he's going to be pretty strong. And especially in the case of Vayne and Lucian, those are pretty short range. So a lot of times they're going to be really close to engage range with your Twisted Advance. So that's really one of the biggest things right there is you can't dodge that, right? You can't flash it. You can't tumble out of it. You can't dash out of it. It's going to get you. Right now, you got to be careful. If they're near a tower, they can pull you under tower with the flash. So watch out for that. But there's no way they're dodging it. Unless they take something like Hourglass, they're not getting out of that. So it's just a point click. You go untargetable. The enemy support can't peel you off. So they can have a Braum sitting there with a shield. They can have a Leona standing in front of them. There's no way they're interrupting you, right? You're getting right through a Janna Tornado. You're getting right through a Thresh Flay. Whatever it is, you're getting on them. So it's a point-click route. Now, it doesn't last forever. It only lasts for 1 second. You can get it up to 1.4 seconds. But just being able to get there, get on them, and then being able to Bramble Smash and push them back up to 300 units. Now, I'm not sure exactly. I think the closer they are to you, the further back they get knocked. It doesn't show that here, but I assume that's what it means. So you can knock somebody. If you Twisted Advance, then get behind them and Bramble Smash them, then you knock them 300 units forward. So not only are you CCing someone, but you're displacing them at that point as well. And it applies a pretty big slow, although only for like a quarter of a second. So that's really the huge thing there, is it's untargetable, virtually impossible to peel. This is a nightmare for Rakan, because if you try to W in and he Twisted Advances you, you're probably going to die. And then once you get your ultimate, then you can use that ult, and it's got a pretty long CC. Even point blank, it's about a 1 second route. And then if you throw it, like a good combo is if you can start your ult out of a bush, and then you flash and W onto them, and then you can push them back into the ult, then you get those really big routes, right? Then you're going to get like a 2 second route off of the 600 range when it hits them. So that's a really nice combo. Or you can start out of a bush and then Shirelia's run at him and W onto him. So I think that's part of what makes him really unique. It's a short range engage, but it's impossible to get away from it once he gets you. So if you can get a Shirelia's or a flash, if your flash is up, or if you get a good flank on him, then it's very reliable. So that's really handy. Bramble Smash also is a displacement, as we just mentioned before, so this can be very good at peeling. So if you have a Zac that's trying to engage on your backline, you can peel with Bramble Smash. Jarvan's trying to flag and drag. Thresh lands that hook on your AD carry, and he's about to follow it up. You can Bramble Smash and knock him out of that. So it's just kind of like a Janna Tornado there that actually does damage that you put points into. And it's got a lot longer range than people think, 600 range. So you can Bramble Smash stuff out of the air quite a bit. Also, I mean, Tristana is not like super popular, but if some champs are trying to like dash or jump away or whatever, you can interrupt that. So, Another thing, once again, if Rakan's running at you, you can Bramble Smash when he's about to W with his ult ticking onto the AD carry. You can W and knock him out of his, or you can Q and knock him out of his W. So there's just everything about Maokai is very frustrating for Rakan to deal with. But that's really handy. And then another thing that really makes him unique, aside from just his mechanics, like his particularly good peel against mobility, his kind of anti-mobility abilities there, is the sapling toss. Now this is so useful because it's got very long range, 1100 range. You can throw this thing like more than twice as far as you can place a ward. And it gives you free vision of an area. This is very similar to Zyra's plants. When Zyra's meta, and you hear me talking about this over and over and over again, anytime you have minions that can guard bushes for you or can check bushes for you, it's so strong because it allows you to hold on to your wards. You don't have to walk up. You don't have to take that risk of going up and face checking that bush. You don't have to walk your wards forward and waste a bunch of them just so that you can secure vision. You can use the sapling toss to help you get vision. And just like Zyra's plants, it still gives you vision even if there's a control ward in the bush. So that little sapling is still going to give you a lot of vision even if the control ward's in the bush. Now, I will say that the vision is not as far as a Zyra plant. The Zyra plant gives you full ward vision, basically, you know, like 900 range or whatever vision, versus this sight range is only 350. I think it gives you a little bit more once it initially gets placed. It gives you sight around itself while it's in the air, I believe. But it only gives 350 vision, so it's a little bit more than like a Ghost Pour award. It's similar to that though. So it's a fairly short amount of vision, but it's still really good, and it guards the bush. So if someone actually walks up, it does pretty respectable damage to them, right? Even if you only have 1 point in this, that's 14% of their maximum health plus 50. Right, so even if they only have 1,000 health, that's still going to be 190 damage, right, for each sapling. So if you have multiple saplings in the bush and they walk into it, that can do a lot of damage. And it lasts for 30 seconds, base. And then every 2.5% bonus health scales as well. So if you end up, you know, with 500 bonus health, that's going to be an extra 13 seconds or so. So you can get to like, you know, almost 45 seconds on this. So it can watch for a long time. So that's great when you want to fight over, you know, a control ward in the tri-bush, or when you're trying to scout an area, see if you're getting camped. You can scout it so safely. And then late game, you can use those saplings to help guard certain choke points, certain bushes, so that people are going to be really scared to engage. If you're trying to get that dragon and you have those saplings and all of those little bushes around, that's going to make him a lot stronger. So that extra little bush that was put on the blue side ramp can be so useful now to put that sapling in to give you that extra vision and give you that extra protection. Obviously, if you get Water Drake, that's going to be even better because it's going to be saplings everywhere. But that thing is just so handy for vision control, for zone control that deals like pretty good damage, just for sneak attacks. You know, if you have like 3 of these sitting in a bush, and you know that the enemy's going to come walking through, and then those 3 hit somebody, and you W onto them and smash them, like, you know, you're going to knock off like 80% of their health. So it's a surprising amount of damage, and it's so cheap too. All of his spells are really cheap. It's 60 mana at all ranks for this, 50 mana at all ranks for Bramble Smash, Sapling Toss. You can just get 1 point in this and be very effective at 60 mana. So that means you don't even necessarily, and I haven't tried this build out 100%. Usually, so far, I've been getting Zeeks, but I think that you could pull this off. You could just rush something like a Shirelia's on him because it's so powerful with his Twisted Advance, and your mana's fine. So in theory, you don't really need to get that Zeeks early for that mana because his mana management's so well, especially if you go Presence of Mind. And the Tenacity Rune, which is what I'm recommending. Although, you know, there are some other things you could try out as well. You know, you could go for something like a Ravenous Hunter if you want to have extra healing in the laning phase. Having that Sapling Toss come out and deal damage to the minions could actually end up healing you for quite a bit. I'm not sure if that's going to be worth or not. Or you could go for the Movement Hunter. I forgot what it's called, but the thing that ends up giving you like 55 out of combat movement speed can obviously be really good too. So there are some things in the red tree that Could be decent, but I've been trying Presence of Mind and Tenacity just so you can skip the mana item if you want to. But yeah, and then his ult, you know, has 3,000 range. It's basically like a Nami wave that is even wider, that actually CCs, doesn't just knock them up and slow them, but actually CCs for a very long time if you hit them with it. I think it's a little bit slower than Nami's wave, but nevertheless, it's just really good. So he's just very well-rounded. He has his own heal in the laning phase too, which is nice, because it does add up over time. So if you're getting poked out, you know, by an Ezreal or by, you know, a Zyra or whatever, you can get some healing in the lane, right? Whereas Nautilus and Leona are not going to have any healing available to them. And just comparing, like, the cost of this, it's a 5-second cooldown. It also has really good wave clear. It does the full 250 damage to all minions there. So being able to push the wave really fast, you know, so you get a good back timing, or so you get priority for Dragon or Scuttle or whatever, can be really nice also. Versus, like, you know, Nautilus's E, if you level that up, it ends up being like 90 mana every time you cast E. So yeah, it can wave clear, but you're going to run out of mana really fast a lot of times. Versus this is only 50 with a very similar amount of damage, a very similar cooldown, and a similar area of effect. I think this might actually be a little bit longer. So it's just, and it can displace people. So it's just basically a better Nautilus E. I think Nautilus's E has a larger radius, so in a team fight, if you're like, you know, 360 degrees surrounded by enemies, the Nautilus's E might be a little bit better, but otherwise, I think that, you know, this is going to be really good. Now, I haven't tried this either, but he does have a little bit of a tanky AP option in the fact that you could just get a Leandres if you want to, if you're really far ahead. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that all the time, but that can actually be pretty good. I mean, this does really high base damage, and, you know, it does apply a slow on the seed itself and a percentage health damage. So if you hit somebody with a Leandre seed later on, that would end up being 21% of their maximum health every time they get hit by one of these seeds. And it has HP on it. The problem is his AP ratios are pretty bad. They nerfed that. That's one of the big things is, you know, back in, I think it was spring of 2017, he may have gotten, reworked around then. It was AP Maokai support that was, like, really strong. Like, these seeds, like, you could actually one-shot somebody out of the bushes with the seeds. So that might be a little weird to do that, but Leandres could work if you need a little bit of extra damage. If your team's, like, all AD or something, you could try to do that. Just to add a little bit of extra AP threat in there, although, once again, his ratios aren't that great. So Leandres would be the only thing I would maybe consider from the AP aspect. But anyways, try him out. Really good, especially against, you know, like I said, the Lucian, Vayne, Ezreal to a lesser extent, because you may not be able to get close to him. But he just really limits a lot of the mobility. Against Rakan, a lot of these little just kind of jumpy champions that are trying to get all over the place, he's going to be pretty good against that. So try him out. I've been having some success with him. I think he's really strong. Probably the most underrated overall support right now. And y'all who have been around the channel for a long time know if I'm recommending something weird like that, I think it's actually legit. I'm not an all-capser. You know, I don't say stuff just to say something weird that sounds interesting. I know I might get more views if I did that, if I just tried to hype up a bunch of weird stuff that's actually not that good. That's just not how I roll, though. You know, I try to give you guys actual good insider info, and I think this is a legit, fairly off-meta pick that's really strong. Once again, I didn't invent it. You know, he's had a high win rate for a while now. I just think that Nautilus and Leona, you know, had been stronger than him for a while, but after those nerfs, he's coming up a little bit, especially, like I said, with the kinds of AD carries that are getting played right now, most notably the Lucian and the Vayne. Is good. Especially if you're a Rakan main, I think he's a very good pick just in case they pick Rakan, or Lucian and Vayne, I talked about with Rakan, he's not that good into them. So this is a good thing to say, oh, they picked Vayne? Okay, I'm going to pick Maokai. That's how I've been doing it. So anyways, I think he's really strong right now. Lulu is another one that I've been like slowly moving up a little bit. I think I had her in tier 3 last time, but I've been moving her up in the ranks a bit. And I think she might be ready for prime time in tier 1. She has had a higher win rate for a little bit now. She's usually lower than most enchanters, so like the Sona and the Janna and Nami, she's going to be a bit lower. But I think she has some special unique cases that are really good that are in the meta right now. The biggest one is Echo. Echo is very strong right now, as most people know, probably. And just having that point-click polymorph to shut him up for 2 seconds so that he can't use his ult effectively does, you know, like 2,000 damage to him whenever you do that, right? So it's so much effective damage because he can't use his ult, and a lot of his survivability is that ult. If he tries to dash in and do something dumb, you know, and like try to kill somebody, try to kill you or your AD carrier or whatever, hoping that he's just going to be able to ult right back out, no problem, and you polymorph him, it can completely shut him down. So I think that specifically that matchup's really good. There are a couple of other champions sort of like that, like Diana, who can also be pretty squishy if she doesn't get her Conqueror stacked up, doesn't get her orbs ticking that much. So I think can be good there against things like a LeBlanc, who wants to go in and then she wants to be able to, you know, W back out. If she doesn't trigger her W before you get that polymorph on her, you might be able to blow her up. Against Kassadin, if you choose not to ban that champion, if he goes in and doesn't one-shot you, W might help out there. So against a lot of these kind of close-range AP fighter type of champs that are really strong right now, Silas is another one, right? If you shut him up with that polymorph and he can't use his W to get that heal, you actually might be able to kill him. So I think against those types of champs, she's pretty good. And then also, she's pretty good at buffing up some of the popular picks right now that really like the attack speed, such as Vayne. Gives her the movement speed, gives her a ton of extra attack speed. The picks is really good. Every time you auto attack, ends up giving like 80 extra on attack damage. So that's really strong. And then the movement speed buff is so good on things like the Darius, the Sett, the Garen. You know, a lot of those movement speed gated champions. She's going to be pretty good with him. So she doesn't scale as well with plus healing and shielding as some of the other champs out there because her ult doesn't count as a heal or a shield. So that kind of sucks. It does get around grievous wounds, and a lot of champions do have grievous wounds out there, so that is pretty nice if they are rocking the Morellonomicon, which or Executioners, which a lot more people are doing because there's a lot of Spirit Visages going around out there right now. There's a lot of champions that have a lot of healing that's really problematic. So more and more people are getting anti-healing. So she does kind of play around that pretty well with Wild Growth and with her shield. So she's really not vulnerable to anti-healing at all. So that is really helpful. And they have buffed her shield several times. So it's back up to a 240 base, and it's an 8-second cooldown. So pretty respectable shield right now. But I think the biggest thing is just that polymorph against the fighter AP champs that really don't want to get a Quicksilver Sash. Most enchanters are not getting Mikhails right now, or just most supports in general are not getting Mikhails, and a lot of people just disrespect just how strong Whimsy is, and they're not going to take Cleanse. So she's also particularly good against Vayne, because Vayne's going to be a really close range champion that if she doesn't have her mobility can very easily get blown up. Right, and not only does Polymorph completely stuff Vayne, but Help Picks is also really good because it grants True Sight of her for 4 seconds. So if you put the plus Picks on somebody and she tries to tumble and go invisible, you're still going to see her. So that's really great against invisible champs out there. Most of them are just going to open on you and start killing. Like, they don't consistently apply that invisibility. So like Twitch and Eve, once they show up, they're just going to break invisibility and try to kill you. But Vayne is that one champion that consistently keeps going in and out of invisibility. It would also be pretty good against Kai'Sa for those reasons as well. And just once again, a lot of those close range ADCs, right? You got your Vayne's popular right now. Lucian's popular. Kai'Sa is still pretty popular. That means they're going to be in polymorph range probably. And that means that you're going to be able to harass them a lot easier with your Help Picks plus your Q combo. So Lulu, you know, has a much harder time dealing with things like Senna, dealing things like Caitlyn because they're longer range. You're not going to be able to polymorph them. It's going to be a lot more challenging to try to get them with Help Picks. But since the close range champs, ADCs are coming back into vogue, I think she's going to be really strong with that. So, yeah, I think she's just a pretty good mix of early game harassment, very unique skill which stuffs melee assassins really well. Her ultimate also stuff's kind of traditional burst assassins like a Talon or like a Zed, just that instant infusion of health, no delay on it, no grievous wounds when they put the ignite on there. can be really good. And that's another really nice thing to put on something like a Darius or like a Set on your front line, because it gives them a slow for 7 seconds as well. And you can overheal somebody. So if the Zac goes in, you know, with his E, and you just want to get that knock up, right? You just want to knock somebody up for 0.75 seconds and get that slow. You can do it. Even if he's at full health, it's fine. You can overheal him. He's still going to get the 300 bonus health. He still gets full value out of it. So it is very good to put that on Initiate Champs, and it's a 900 range. So that's very helpful too. So I think that she just plays really well with a lot of engaged champions out there. She's a very good sort of anti-assassin champ. Now, it's not going to be as strong if they have the really fed Darius or the Set. It's like, yeah, you can Whimsy him, or Polymorph him, but they're going to, it's going to be hard to kill him before they break out. Although with Set, maybe not. If he doesn't get a ton of tanky stuff, if he tries to go for the kind of popular Trinity Black Cleaver build, and he's just trying to get survivability off of his W, I think, his big shield, if he can't get that shield, I think that's what he maxes. If he can't use that shield because he's polymorphed, maybe it's an Echo type of situation where you can blow him up before he gets to use it. So I do think that, you know, a lot of that, and, you know, same thing as Nami, the fact that Sona and Soraka were nerfed does move her up the pecking order a bit more. So I'm going to have to explore Lulu a bit more. I think that she can be pretty solid if you have especially some of those meatballs on your team, and if you're against Echo, Vayne, Lucian, some of these other kind of close range champs. I think she can be really good. Okay, Janna's another one that I'll mention here, and I'm kind of just putting this in here out of respect. Janna, I feel, is kind of risky right now. Please, just don't do it to me. Why are they doing this to me? I want to leave the ads on here, but I don't know why this crap is trolling me. It's like a horror movie with the Teemo. So sorry about that, guys. I guess I could just, like, lower the system volume. We don't need volume for this right now. Yeah, maybe I'll just do that. Just mute everything. Okay, we're just going to take the volume all the way off. So sorry about that. I'll just do that from now on because we don't need music for these types of things. Okay. But, let me lower that. Okay. Where were we? Okay, Janna. So, Janna does have a really good win rate right now overall. 53%. She does have good, like, okay harassment. I think that Nami's way better at the harass, and Lulu's probably a little bit better. But she can spam her W. I wouldn't go for the full-on Comet Scorch version. I would go with Airy these days. It just scales a little bit better. A lot of champions in the bot lane are going to be getting some sustain right now, especially like your Lucians, your Vaynes. They're going to have Blade the Ruined King sustain. They'll probably have some sustain from their runes as well, either Bloodline or Taste of Blood or Ravenous Hunter. But the thing about Janna is she does rotate around the map really well. She gets a lot of personal movement speed off of her W, so that does give her really nice vision control. She's also really good at disengaging, so she can comfortably go in, get some of those deep wards if people try to engage on her. She's got her tornado. She's got her ultimate in an emergency situation, so I think that she can rotate. She can ward a little bit more comfortably than something like a Nami or a Lulu. She does provide really nice scaling on champions that are particularly going to go crit because of the bonus AD that you hand out. It's usually about 50 bonus AD in the mid game, which is quite a lot. So if you do have something like an Aphelios on your team, or a Misfortune, or just some other champ that's going to be getting crit that hits pretty hard, or just anything that has like a really nice AD damage, so even something like a Graves with Eye of the Storm on him, some assassins like a Zed, just putting that extra AD on there can be very nice. And she's just kind of the queen of disengage, so she's very good against things like Zac, where you can use the Tornado to disengage, or if you're against a Leona or a Nautilus, she can be pretty good in the late game as well. This does heal up for a ton, you know, up to 300 healing with a 150% AP ratio. Now, it is on a really long cooldown. It's 150 seconds versus, I think, Lulu's like 110 seconds on her ult. But it is AoE, whereas Lulu's is single target. So being able to knock back and reset is good. So basically, if you think your AD is actually going to do well on your team and you're going to get a free lane, she can be really good. You know, Draven is another one she's excellent with because that bonus AD scales so well with his Q. Because Draven basically gets double benefit out of flat AD because he gets it on his normal auto, obviously, and then his Q pretty much gives him close to 100% extra bonus AD once he gets a few points in it. So Draven is another one. You wouldn't think that with Janna because Draven wants to go in and go, you know, kill people, but the benefit that she gives to Draven is huge, or like Jhin is really huge as well. So just really nice PL champion, pretty good scaling with her shield over time, excellent sort of team fight, disengage potential. So especially if you have like a couple of long range champs where you can peel, that's going to give a little bit more time for your team to get off some autos. That's good. So if you're duoed with an AD carry you can trust, or you do your research, you look at Professor or whichever third-party program you want to use, you see, okay, your ADC is really good. They're an ADC main. They're 60% on whatever they're playing. You might want to invest in Janna. So the problem is, I think that a lot of the champs out there right now just synergize so well if you can give them movement speed to engage and chase and run people down, you know, like the Darius, like the Set and stuff like that. She doesn't synergize that well. Like, she doesn't press the go button and run in, you know, so it's hard to make plays yourself and it's hard to help your allies make plays. But you are good against those things, right? You're good against the Darius, you're good against the Set if you hit them with your tornado and your ult's up. So she's in kind of a weird position where she's good against a lot of the other engaged champs out there, but she doesn't really play well with them, right? Versus someone like Nami plays well with them and against them. So that's why I have her a little bit lower than something like a Nami in the laning phase. But, you know, she is going to be a really strong champ, does have great synergy with Shirelia's, does have great synergy with Ardent Sensor, so she's still going to be pretty solid. The fact that she doesn't have a heal in the laning phase is a little bit troublesome. And the fact that your shield is on such an obscenely long cooldown, right? It starts off at a 16-second cooldown, and if you're trying to harass in the laning phase, you're probably going to want to get like at least a couple of points in Zephyr. So that is kind of awkward that your main harassment tool is separate from your main sort of shielding tool. Versus Nami, it's the same thing. You just max W. That's your damage. That's your harass and your heal. With Lulu, you're maxing shield in the lane. That's your damage and your shield. So it's a little weird in terms of point distribution early on. Lulu's shield is also on an 8-second cooldown at all ranks. So, you know, it's half the cooldown early on with what Janna's is. So I just think that against some of these other enchanters, it can be a little awkward in the laning phase. But if you make it through the laning phase and your team has a really good team fight comp, then she is going to be pretty solid later on. Her shield, should be noted, is a little bit weaker than Lulu's. It does have a better AP ratio, but it is 20 point less shield, and it's on a longer cooldown, 4 seconds. Now, you can lower it if you do hit pieces of CC. You can get it down to about Lulu's shield length, but it's a little bit more conditional. Now, she does hand out that free bonus AD, so if they have crit, that's really good. But you got to remember, when Lulu shields somebody, then they're getting that Pix bonus damage, which in the mid game is about going to be 80 extra damage on attack, 70 or 80 extra damage on attack once you're like level 10 or 11. So it's similar. Like, unless they are critting a lot, Lulu's shield is going to be put out a similar amount of damage per attack. And Lulu's shield, the Pix also lasts even if the shield breaks. The Pix still lasts. You still get that bonus damage. Versus if Janna's shield breaks, you don't get that bonus AD anymore. It's done. So you shield your AD carry. You know, the person who's diving the AD carry breaks it almost instantly. You don't get any value out of that bonus AD. Right? But with Lulu, whenever you put E on somebody, it attaches the Pix to them. Shielding them for 2.5 seconds if they are an ally. And Pix, I believe, lasts for, I think it's 6 seconds. Okay, I thought it was 5. But yeah, casting Pix attaches for 6 seconds and ends up doing, at level 11, 75 base and then 15% of your bonus AP. So even at level, let's just say level 9, when your shield's maxed out, 63 on-hit damage, you're probably going to have 100 AP by then, basically, if you have Frostfang, and then you get, you know, Ardent Sensor or Athene's, usually Ardent Sensor, that's 60 extra. Frostfang, I think the level 2 is something like 30 AP, maybe it's 25, I don't know, it's a lot. And then you have your runes, you're basically going to have somewhere close to 100 AP. So you're going to get 15 more So that's going to be 78 on hit damage. So basically 80 on hit damage. Right? So I think that Lulu's scaling is very, very similar to Janna. So I think Lulu's overall going to be a little bit better than Janna in a lot of situations. I just feel like she's a bit more versatile. But I do think that Janna is pretty strong right now. Okay, Yuumi. So I've knocked Yuumi down a little bit. I do still think that she is pretty good. It's just I feel like she plays a lot worse if your team's behind. And her vision control is just abysmal. Like, Lulu's is not great. But Lulu, like, can at least invest in boots without feeling like you're wasting some stats. And she can speed herself up for a longer period of time with W to get away. She has her ult to, like, protect herself if she has to, if someone's trying to hard engage on her. So I just feel like she can and she can, I don't know. I mean, Yuumi can check bushes too with her Q. She just feels a little bit less vulnerable than Yuumi does whenever you're trying to go get some vision. Like, you can attach to other people, and I mean, Lulu and Yuumi, I think, are very, very similar in a lot of stuff that they do, in the sense that they, like, the Whimsy gives, like, speeds people up, adds extra attack speed, just like Yumi's heal speeds people up, adds attack speed. I think it's the exact same amounts, 45% on Yuumi as well. So that part is very similar.
Dad, I want a song.
What is it, Rory? You want a song?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, Daddy. I'll give you a song.
I want a different song.
You want a different song?
Yeah.
Okay, you want the nursery rhyme song again?
Nope.
Okay, well, we gotta... Molly might help you pick out a song. Here, let's go with this one. Oh, you're scaring the cat
I
off.
want to sit.
Oh, you can't sit on me and listen to a song. Daddy's working right now. You can sit on me if you want to, but we can't do a song, okay? You can go in the other room and do a song if you want.
I don't want to.
Okay. Ow, Rory,
I want
you're stepping on Daddy's feet. Okay, you can have a song, but you can't listen to it right here, okay?
I want a different song.
Okay, well, go show Mommy. Mommy will help you, okay?
No.
Yeah, Mommy will help you. Honey, she's having a meltdown. Daddy's recording a video.
Oh my goodness.
Rory. Rory, do you need a nap?
Oh. Yeah, I was hoping Johnny could help with that here in a little bit.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, she wanted to listen to Sesame Street on my phone, which is fine, but she wanted to sit in my lap, and then she's going to say, I don't want that song, I don't want that song. She needs a nap. She's getting a little cranky. But we'll go see to that here in a little bit. Anyways, so I do think that Yuumi is pretty good. I just feel like she is kind of vulnerable. Her early game is very suspicious. Like, it costs a lot of mana to spam those Qs. It's really dangerous to step off and try to land those autos. You can do it, but I feel like she's going to get out-harassed early by the Nami, the Lulu, the Janna. If you do make it through to later on in the game, she does feel very unstoppable, right? If you attach to that, the Darius, or you attach to the Set, or, whatever kind of bruisers out there, she does feel really strong. But it just feels like that early game is a bit more suspect, and if your team is really far behind, it's hard to go out by yourself and get that vision to try to regain control of the game. It's hard to make picks, on your own. Her scaling is good, but it's not as good as something, well, if it's just you're throwing all your buffs on an AD carry and just telling them to go at it and just, like, fight somebody to the death, I feel like Lulu is going to outscale that a little bit more. And then Nami's going to have more CC. Like, Yuumi does have really good CC with her ult, obviously, but that's kind of her only real piece of CC. Her Q does apply a small slow, but Nami with the bubble and with the wave is going to be really nice. So, I don't know. Yumi's claim to fame is that she can be, in team fights, pretty invulnerable if you attach to a tank. So if you're doing a lot of team fights, she's good. But if there's a lot of skirmishing going on, if you're having to rotate to a bunch of different lanes, which happens all the time in solo queue, you're attached to somebody in the bot lane, but there's a crazy fight going on mid lane, you want to rotate up there and try to make a play. It's hard to do that with Yuumi because a lot of times she's not going to take boots. even if you do take Ionian boots, you're still going to be kind of slow getting up there. If you get cut off on the way, they see you on a ward or something, they rotate down on you, they're going to kill you. So versus something like, Nami, Lulu, or Janna, she's just not going to be able to rotate as quickly as they can, and it's just going to be a lot riskier to do so. So I think in a clean, if you get a decent laning phase, you get out of the laning phase and you have clean 5v5 fights, I think that she can be very good. If you have a fed bruiser, she feels, really OP and virtually unstoppable. But I just feel like it's a little bit riskier because, there are still a lot of team fights going on, but you're seeing more and more, I'm seeing in my games at least, more and more kind of skirmishes going on too. Like, you're seeing things like Riven and Fiora are becoming a little bit more popular. You're seeing skirmisher ADCs like Lucian, like Vayne coming in, who can team fight, but they also, are more likely to want to try to spend some time inside lanes. So I just feel like we're kind of moving a little bit towards a skirmisher, assassin type of comp sort of meta. You are still seeing a lot of the team fights going on, but I feel like in a bunch of games you're still seeing a little bit more skirmisher, assassin type of stuff coming in too. So we'll just see. I think she is really good, but I'm just going to temporarily put her in tier 2. Obviously, she has a lower win rate than the other ones, but win rate's not a really good indicator for Yuumi just because she is so hard to play, and it's one of those where if she starts going, it's really hard to stop her. But overall, I think that she can still be pretty solid. All right, Sona's another one who I'm just kind of putting her on here because she has a really high win rate, but I'll be honest with you. I mean, I guess if you're newer to support or you're at silver and lower where people aren't going to abuse Sona and where just having something that's really reliable harass can be really strong, I think that Sona can be solid. It does help that they increased her movement speed on her E. That's certainly going to be really useful, but I still just feel like she's really vulnerable. If we are going to start seeing more of these assassin type of champs coming in, you're seeing a lot of these bruiser type of champs coming in. Assassin bruisers like Diana and Echo. I feel like she can be really vulnerable. So she's kind of like Yuumi. I just feel like I'd rather play... I don't know. She has better harassment than Yuumi earlier on, and she's easier to play than Yuumi. But I feel like she's just a lot more vulnerable than Yuumi later, and they're very similar. In terms of they have almost the same kind of ult. Sona's is instant. Yuumi's can root for longer and last longer, so it's harder for them to flash out of it. Now, Sona does put out a lot more sustained team fight healing and buffs. So if Sona gets left alone and she just gets to sit there and spam her W over and over and over again, she's going to put out thousands of gold worth of value in health, right? Both in healing and in shielding. So she is a little bit vulnerable to grievous wounds, but she does have a shield component to her W as well, which a lot of people forget about. That doesn't get reduced by grievous wounds. So she's kind of like a 50-50 on healing and shielding. A lot of times. She does have that good team fight ult. She can rotate a lot better than Yuumi. So that is one major thing that she does better, right? Is she can, put that E on and zoom across the map, get over there to that mid lane fight, and maybe make a difference. She is still very vulnerable. If she gets caught out in the river, she's probably going to get killed. But overall, she's good. She's just a risky team fight champion that has a ton of scaling. So if you think you're going to have a lot of protection, if you want to, have some harassment in the laning phase and have some of the highest scaling in the game in terms of healing and shielding later on, if you got a couple of meatballs on your team, right, you got the Darius, the Set, you got Jungle Zac or whatever, then I think that she can be really strong. But if they have a lot of assassins, if you're not going to be team fighting a lot, if you're going to be split pushing and playing around that talent on the team or the Kha'Zix or the Fiora or whatever who doesn't really want to team fight, it can be a little bit rougher. But the more likely you are to team fight, the stronger Sona's going to be. Okay, Bard is another one that is just really weird. He's one of the most bizarre supports out there because he has he's really dependent on the early game and early game harass, but he's so close range. You have to land autos and he only has 500 auto range. He does have really good roaming, which is very nice. His ultimate is one of the most unique ultimates in the game, right? But that can be a bad thing too. It can completely ruin the fight for your team, but it can also completely dominate if you land it. So there's a lot of stuff like that on Bard where he just feels like pretty high risk to me. But if you make really, like, he rewards you very heavily for practicing him a lot and knowing all of the little nuances of his kit. So knowing exactly what you should be doing with those ults in extremely complicated fights. You know, and being able to land it, not only knowing what to do, but being able to land that ult to, you know, clip the fight to maybe CC one or two key players while you kill the other couple of players, or to use that ult to save somebody from one of the enemy's ults. Like a Karthus ult's a pretty simple one, right? If there's a Karthus ult that's about to go off and you ult your own teammates to save them, you know, that's a pretty obvious save. But there are just a lot of situations where it's not going to be as obvious. And if you accidentally, you know, you're trying to hit the enemy AD carry with your ult and they dodge it and you accidentally hit your assassin who's trying to dive their AD carry or something like that and give the AD carry breathing room and space, it can completely ruin a team fight. So to me, he feels extremely risky. I don't think he scales that well at all. He does have the meeps, but he has like no ratios on like two of his abilities. His E and his W don't scale at all. So the itemization is really funky on him. A lot of people just do like Athene's Redemption, I think. But you can see his win rate here. You know, if you can win by like 25 minutes, he has a really high win rate, like 55%, getting up there. But then he just falls off a cliff. And for me, I just don't like those high variance early game champs that just don't scale very well into the late game. I think it's really risky, but he does have, you know, a very high win rate overall right now if you're good on him. The standard is the Athene's Redemption. I know the cute build, you know, is the Dead Man's Rapid Fire, but I feel like that's only if you're super fed. It's very expensive to go for that build relative to the other items. So it's not even as high of a win rate. So a lot of people who rush the Dead Man's first, it's actually a lower win rate than Athene's. And presumably if you're going for that a lot of the times, then you're going to be far ahead because it's a much more expensive item. You do complete it 3 minutes later, though. So yeah, I guess if you get the Rapid Fire second, you know, that's a slightly higher win rate on that item. But then it's like, what do you get after those three? I don't know. To me, that's just a funky build. It does give you a lot of movement speed. It does give you like a really nice like first hit that you land on somebody. But it's just so expensive to get that unless you're just like really fed. So I don't know. He's cool. He's interesting. He's just a weird mix of like roaming support with some lane pressure, with a little bit of healing, with a little bit of initiate. But if you know, it does make him very flexible in terms of his skills. So, you know, if you can figure out what to do in a bunch of the different situations, he obviously has the potential to win a lot of games. So anyways, I got him on there out of respect in tier 2. But you really need to play him a lot, right? I think really the only champion that might be considered a bit more challenging than Bard to master might be Thresh, but he's certainly up there. He's really far up there. Okay, Blitzcrank, pretty straightforward, and we need to go ahead and end this. We're over an hour here. Pretty straightforward. You land your hook. You know, he has the highest burst damage potential of any support, or up there. You know, maybe Zyra or Brand are kind of in the conversation, but he's up there as far as damage potential on a support if you land that hook, especially in the early game. So if the enemy team has a lot of squishies, if you land the hook, if you're really good at it, you win. If you miss the hook or the team has a bunch of tanks and, you know, otherwise invalid targets, then he's going to feel pretty bad. So he does have a good win rate. He does have good matchups into things like Nami, like Janna, especially shielding champs like Janna and Lulu, because his ult breaks the shield. That does make him particularly good in those matchups. It would make him very good against something like a Set. If you land that, just anything that's going to get a big shield that you can break with your ultimate is going to be pretty nice. And then, so he's okay. It's just basically you hit the hook, you're awesome. You don't, he's worthless. And then Nautilus, I just have down here as the tier 2, kind of one of the legacy engaged champs. I think people are still picking him a lot, but he is sort of falling off in win rate and pick rate a bit more. We are rotating more towards that Enchanter style of meta with the Yuumi becoming popular and the Nami becoming popular. Lulu's creeping up a bit too. But you are still seeing some Nautilus and Leona. Their damage has just been cut a lot. I would probably max E on Nautilus these days for that wave clear if you want that. He does have that point click ultimate, has nice range on it. I think it's like 800 range. They can't dodge it, so it's kind of similar to Maokai in that respect. Very good against highly immobile champs. The problem with that is that it's on a cooldown, right? It's a 120 second cooldown versus Maokai can just start a fight anytime with his W with the point click against those close range mobile champs. So it is pretty good. I will say it can be a little frustrating sometimes that his ultimate does have a cast time on it. I think it's like a half a second cast time, especially against Vayne, because if she tumbles and goes invisible, it'll cancel your cast animation. So that's kind of a feels bad. His hook does have a really fat hitbox, but it can't go over walls. So that does limit your skirmishing potential and your roaming potential a little bit because, you know, one of the best ways to engage and get some of those picks in the mid game is over that river bush near mid lane, right? Either the top or the bottom side river bush. And he can't really make that play in the same way that Leona or Thresh can. So it does limit your gank opportunities, your sneaky opportunities a little bit. He does get some more mobility. So he can potentially get away from ganks a little bit easier if you do land some of those hooks. So that is pretty nice. But he's okay. I just think that he just has fallen off a little bit in the meta. But he's still decent. You know, he still has the point click ult. He still has good team fight damage with his E. He has a fat hitbox on the hook. If you take Gargoyle Stone Plate, you know, you rush that item, he can be good. Now, he can run into mana problems, so I still feel like you need to get a Zeke's early. Some people might still be rushing Gargoyle, but he's all right. I just think that he gets outscaled a lot of times by enchanters, and it's hard to get those all-in early kills and to get that extra pressure because they nerfed the damage on his hook. Also, they did nerf conditioning. I didn't mention that, but on this patch, they did nerf conditioning as well. So that does hurt Maokai a little bit, like I mentioned before. But it's really going to hurt Nautilus because, you know, he really relies very heavily on that conditioning to get some resistances because he otherwise just doesn't have it. He does have the shield with his W. Maokai is going to be able to trigger his healing a lot more in team fights. And Maokai, in general, is going to be doing a lot more damage and just does other stuff that Nautilus doesn't do. Nautilus doesn't have a great way to check bushes. You know, he just kind of has to walk up and use a ward. So that's also something that's super risky. Or Nautilus doesn't. Did I say Maokai? I meant Nautilus doesn't. Versus Maokai does have a really good way to check bushes. So I would just rather play Maokai rather than Nautilus or Leona right now. I just think that he just has a bunch of unique properties we already talked about that set him apart. But if you do want a longer range engage, that is one thing that Nautilus does do better. He does have the 1100 range hook. So if you need the long range engage and you want that point click, you know, lockdown CC later on, then I think that Nautilus could still be a decent pick in some places. Then we've got Senna. Senna's still pretty good. I mean, she is one of the most popular supports right now. Provides good harassment. I still think her items as a pure support are really suspect. Now, part of this could be that she's getting played as fasting Senna, so she's taking the support item, it's counting her as support, but she's really like trying to function as an AD carry. So, you know, her items are expensive. You know, Umbral is good. That's only 2,400 gold. That is really solid. But then once you have to start getting things like Ghostblade and Dustblade, they're expensive, and a lot of times by the time they come online, people are going to have more armor. So lethality is usually best if you get it really early in the game. So she's okay. Good harass, decent engage with your W, cross map pressure with your ult, nice utility with your E for speed up and confusion, especially against certain like point click abilities like a Malzahar ult, you know, a Maokai W. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of point click targetable that can get away from. So she's still all right. Brand, decent AP threat champion if you want to go for him. Does a ton of damage. If you need an AP threat on your team, he's okay. Same thing with Zyra. Brand has better all-in burst single target damage, especially if you land your stun. But Zyra has a bit more utility with her plants, being able to check brush really well, and then also being able to block skill shots with the plants, apply your poke at longer range with the plants, probably have higher sustained damage in fights with the plants. So they're both pretty good. Brand's also really good against like a very heavy enemy melee comp because you're more likely to get those bounces off of the ult. So both of them are very similar, though. If you need some AP damage, whichever one you prefer playing is going to be pretty good. Thresh is okay. He's getting a bit more popular in Pro, but I just feel like Thresh has just really bad matchups into some of these champs. Like, I just murder Thresh's Rakan. You just outscale him. You can counter-engage a lot of the stuff he's trying to do. Yes, the Flay can stop your movement, but you can play around that with most Threshes. Doesn't scale that well. He does have the souls, but he starts from a really low base on the armor. The itemization is not insane on him. So, I mean, but he's okay. You know, he's got the hook. He's got the lantern. He can go Stoneplate if he wants to be primary engage. He can go Redemption if he wants to be more kind of backline peel. So he is very versatile. He is very powerful. If you're good on Thresh, he can be strong. Nautilus is being played a lot less. Nautilus was traditionally very good against Thresh. That's good for him. I think that Maokai can still mess Thresh up, though. She's got more reliable engage, more CC. She's going to be tankier in general a lot of the time. But Thresh is still pretty decent. And then Leona, she's just kind of one of the riskiest of all of the tanks out there. Yes, it is similar to Maokai, where you can go through minions and just really attach and get to that backline easily. But her ult is on a lower cooldown, but it's a lot more conditional. It's less likely you're going to be able to stun multiple people, although it is possible. You don't have a good way to check bushes. If the fight goes south, you're probably not going to escape. So she's okay. I just feel like a lot of her power, a lot of her early game damage and all-in potential was nerfed quite a bit in recent patches, but she can still do pretty well. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Come by, check out the stream around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.